Okay, so we just watched that Amoeba Sisters, as linked in the agenda up above, that we kind of reviewed some of this, and they did talk about sex-linked recessive, so let's just make sure we finish up with the sex-linked recessive before we start today's activity. So it looks like in fourth hour we had left off this, and I don't know if we even finished that one. So sex-linked recessive, if we use for sex-linked recessive, X big A, X little a, or a Y, those are the possible alleles. Shaded means they have or don't have the trait. Just to recap quick, shaded means they have the trait in question. Non-shaded means they don't. They have the sex-linked recessive. So this is, circle is male or female? Female. And square is? So XY. So XX, shaded, the female would be X little a. Boy who's shaded would be X little a Y. Dad, not shaded, is X big A Y. Mom, not shaded, must be X big A something. So is it possible for an X big A Y and an X big A X something to have a daughter who's X little a X little a? No. Because which chromosome did Dad give, the X or the Y? To the daughter? Which chromosome did he give to the daughter? Because she doesn't have a Y. So Dad had to give the X. Does Dad have an X little a to give? Nope. So this one is not possible because of that individual right there. Is this son possible to be born? Well, where'd that Y chromosome come from? The Y chromosome from the son's Y chromosome came from Dad, because Dad's the only one who has a Y. Is it possible that Mom gave an X little a? Yeah, if Mom was a carrier and was X little a, X big A, X little a. So let's do this next one. I'll try to keep moving. X, Y, X, 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 Y. Does Dad have the trait or not have the trait? Doesn't, so is he a X big A or X little a? Big A. Big A, because he has a dominant trait, not the recessive. Mom does or doesn't have the trait? Doesn't, so she must be X big A something. Okay? Daughter, does she have the trait or not have the trait? Doesn't, so she must be X big A something. And son does have the trait, so he must be X little a Y. Now, is it possible that Dad, X big A Y, and Mom, X big A X something, has daughter, X big A X something? Yeah, it is, right? And we still don't necessarily know what that is. Where did this X big A come from? We don't know. It could have come from Mom or it could have come from Dad. Is it possible that this son could be born from these two parents? Yeah, it is. As long as Mom was X big A X little a, she's a carrier, then this is a possible, this one's possible. I'll do one more together, then I'll have you try it. X, Y, X, 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 Y. Dad has the trait, so Dad's going to be X little a, Y. Mom has the trait, so it's going to be X little a, X little a. Daughter has the trait, X little a, X little a. Son does not, so it's going to be X big A, Y. Is this possible? Is this pedigree consistent? Does this work?
No.
No, it doesn't. Which child is not possible based upon these parents?
X big A Y.
Yeah, the son isn't possible. Okay? Because where did this Y chromosome come from?
Dad.
Came from Dad. And so this X chromosome came from Mom. Does Mom have an X big A?
No.
No, she doesn't. So that's where the inconsistency is, right? Those are the ones that do. Try this last one on your own. See if you got it. is this possible or not possible? Consistent or not consistent, I guess is maybe the terminology we've been using. Yeah, this is possible, right? This daughter can get an X little a from dad, and if this X little a came from dad, where did this one have to come from? So if she was a carrier, X big A, X little a, that would work, as long as this is an X little a. Where'd this Y chromosome come from? Dad. So this X chromosome had to come from mom, and we just said if mom was X big A, X little a, then yeah, that one could work. As long as mom is a carrier, that is a possible outcome. Okay. Questions that I can answer before we move on to the next thing? Okay. Then today we're going to start an activity that will probably take, we'll be today, we'll work on it some more tomorrow, and then we'll kind of see how that goes. So you're going to go through and you're going to be working through pedigrees. On that back lab table right there, there's 3 piles. There's 3 piles of papers. You need to grab one of each. Go grab one of each. There is also PDF versions available of this, so if you say, hey, I'd rather do this electronically, PDF versions are available as well. Trying to switch things over, but I'm struggling. Did take that code in. All right, so I'll continue to try to switch this over. There's 3 things you picked up. The 3 things you picked up. Hey, there we go. The 3 things you picked up are linked via Canvas, and there's a couple different ways you can do this. So today's agenda, we're really starting right here, okay? And this link right here is a PDF version of all 3 of those all together as one thing, as an entire step. We're going to go through and we're going to turn in 3 separate things for this activity. And I'll talk about what those 3 separate things are, and they're each their own separate assignment. So one of those packets says, like, please do not write on this packet. The intent of this is going to be a class copy of this, just to try to save some paper. So when you leave today, I'm going to ask for you to return the one that says, please do not write on this, on the card on the way out. So please don't write on the one that says, please do not write on that packet. Then you have a couple other things. So I'll kind of walk you through what the actual submissions are, and then we'll go through it, and we'll get you going. So let's start by taking a look at that student scratch paper page. Okay, so let's look at the student scratch paper. The intent of this is really just meant to be a quick review of what can be shown on a pedigree. So take 30 seconds and answer these first 6 boxes. Okay, these first 6 boxes. So what is a circle? This circle represents a square. This represents what does shaded circles and squares represent? What is the relationship between the 2 people on the top? What is the relationship between the 2 people on the bottom? And what do the people on the bottom call the people on the top? Okay, so take about 30 seconds to answer those 6 things. so what does a circle represent? Female. What does a square represent? What do shaded mean? These represent, this is poor grammar, but I'm trying to remind you that they represent someone that, yeah, they have the trait. They have the trait. Again, not perfect grammar. These two people on the top, what is the relationship between those two people? They're married, right? And again, I know people can have children without being married, but that's what they call a marriage link. Okay, so it's husband and wife, or their father, they have a child together. That's the idea of that. Okay, husband and wife. What is the relationship between the two individuals on the bottom?
Siblings.
Yeah, they're siblings. Now we could get more specific, and we could say they call each other brother and sister, or we can just say they're siblings to one another. And what do the people on the bottom call the people on the top? Mom and dad, or we can just simply say their parents. Okay, that was meant to be just a quick review, just to remind ourselves of what it is. Now if we take a look at the part, the packet that says please do not write on, this part right here, please do not write on. So the intent of this is to kind of go through, and we're going to work through some pedigrees. If you need some further introductions on pedigrees, please reread the introduction. There's an example. It talks about squares represent males, circles represent females, horizontal lines represent marriage lines, shaded means they're effective, all those things. Okay, so there's the introduction. Then if you notice at the bottom of page 1, it says developing conclusions about different modes of inheritance. And we're going to start with autosomal dominant traits, like we did on the introduction sheet from yesterday. So we are going to say big A represents an abnormal or diseased. They have is a dominant allele, where normal is the recessive allele. So we're going to say it's autosomal dominant. So assume for a moment that the trait is dominant. We don't know what yet. The pedigree shows 3 individuals that blah blah blah. As you attempt to write the genotypes in mind, so now the idea is you're going to go through here. Now all of these pedigrees are things that I'm going to ask you to fill in. However, I do not want you to fill them in on here, because this is the thing that says please don't write on. So this pedigree is this pedigree. And it says number 1 is the initial example. And the instructions say, number 1, it says, is it possible that on page 2, number 1, it says, is it possible that the pedigree above is for an autosomal dominant trait? So the idea is, for all of these pedigrees, I expect you to fill in the genotypes. So autosomal dominant trait, they have the dominant trait. So this shaded circle, this shaded female, has the dominant trait. She's got to be big A something. Mom is not shaded. She must be homozygous recessive because she does not have the dominant trait. Dad does not have the dominant trait, so he must be homozygous recessive. Son does not have the trait, so he must be homozygous recessive. Is it possible for a little a and a little a to have a big A something daughter? No. This is not possible. Okay? So I'm just going to write the word no. In the future, it's going to be more, it's going to ask that. So then, is it possible she received one allele, there is at least one parent, the assumption is the dominant is not consistent. It is not consistent with this pedigree, which is what I just said is no, it's not consistent or it doesn't work. Then, if we look at number 1A, write the genotypes next to the symbols for this pedigree. So then on your scratch paper, this is where all you're writing, autosomal dominant 1A, this pedigree is the same as this. These two pedigrees are the exact same. Scratch paper versus the do not write on packet. And what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to fill in, oh, well, this must be a big A something, this must be a, and I expect you to fill out all the genotypes for this. Then it says for letter 1B, is it possible that this pedigree is for an autosomal dominant recessive trait? Circle 1, yes or no. But again, not on the do not write on this packet, but here is 1A, here is 1B. Circle yes it works or no it doesn't work. Then you move on. It says what can you conclude from these two examples about the parents? And then under 1C, there are 3 statements. And the idea is choose the best generalization from below and copy it onto your summary sheet. So which of these 3, only one, which of these 3 is the best generalization for it? And then what you're supposed to do is on the stapled packet that says pedigree generalizations, for number 1, I want you to write word for word what is the generalization that you drew based upon these 2 pedigrees. Then you move to 2A, fill in the pedigree. 2B, is it possible? Yes or no. 2C, yes or no. And then for under 2, the best generalized statement, and then copy it onto generalization number 2. With me so far? Okay, there's some back and forths. Okay? So, there's 3 things that you're going to submit, and I'm asking you to submit these as 3 separate Canvas submissions. This student scratch paper is going to get turned in separately. This is a 2-pager. This is going to get 2 pages. I'm going to make sure that you have these pedigrees filled in properly, that you have these circled yes and no appropriately. That's, as of right now, due Thursday. The second thing that you're going to get turned in is these generalization statements. So as you work through the do not write on this packet, as you work through this, there are 10 generalization statements that you're going to draw. And if you aren't sure about the generalization, ask and I'll make sure we're doing it right. Okay? So I want you to have 10 generalized statements, but I also want them to be the correct generalized statements. This one side, this is also a separate Canvas submission, just this one page of the packet. Okay? I know it's a little weird because it's a packet, but I only want this page submitted separately. Then, once you're all done with that, these 2 pages go together. Okay? These 2 pages go together. So I stapled them. So as you're answering these questions, you can be looking at this pedigree. That's the intent of this. But this is the 3rd and final submission, 2 pages. This is the last thing. And I'll show you in Canvas how these are. So in Canvas, oops, I hit the wrong button. So in Canvas, okay, this right here, if you click on this, this will give you all, I think it's 13 pages of everything. Okay, so if you need some additional time to work on this, here is where you would get the do not write on this packet, because you're going to leave those here when you leave class today. Okay, so that's where you can access the PDF version of this. Then, again, there's 3 separate submissions, and you can either access them through assignments or from the agenda. And it's student scratch paper, and I even put that as 2 pages. So again, here's the whole packet. For this assignment, you will be submitting the 2 pages called student scratch paper. There is the PDF for those 2 pages and those 2 pages alone. Then that is what you would submit here. And then the next submission in Canvas is for the pedigree generalizations. So just those 10 statements, it's 1 page, and then we'll give you the link to that. And then the final thing is the 2 pages developing conclusions. Now this PDF, just for the record, is in the reverse order of the big pedigrees and the questions. But there it is. So these will be 3 separate Canvas submissions that you're going to submit. And as of right now, I have them slated for Thursday at 11:59. Subject to change. We'll see how we go today and how we are moving it through tomorrow, and we'll adjust that accordingly. So the intent of this is for you to go through, and when it switches between, and if you notice, it starts with autosomal dominant. On page 2, it's autosomal dominant. On page 3, it's autosomal dominant until right here it switches to autosomal recessive. Statement number 3, or question number 3, is autosomal recessive. You have to switch gears. I suggested this last hour. When you get to that point, it might be good that you stand up, you do a quick loop or something, so your brain physically resets and say, now when I sit back down, I am working on autosomal recessive and only autosomal recessive. No one took my suggestion, just for the record, but I don't think it's a bad suggestion. I think it might be a good physical, get up, take a, like, okay, now I'm doing something different. So that's what we're going to be working on today. That's what we're going to be working on tomorrow, and we'll see from there how we're going to do it. You need to ask questions as questions come up. If you don't get something, please ask. My expectation is that these are done well and you're learning while you're doing these, okay? So let me know what I can do to answer questions along the way so we can do this and do this well.